Turkey, situated at the crossroads of Asia and Europe. It's a country with a large young population, but where literacy and education rates have traditionally lagged behind neighbours like Greece and Bulgaria. Turkey has embarked on an ambitious campaign targeting those most deprived of education, young teenage girls. Girls from the poorest and more traditional areas, like here in the eastern province of Van. The government is aiming for 100% attendance of girls throughout the country. Yaprak's 13. Every week she travels this road from her village in the mountains of eastern Turkey to her boarding school an hour away.
We have an aim. We are going to study. I want to study until the end. I want to finish university and I want to have a job.
Yaprak's part of the country's massive education drive, 8 years compulsory schooling for all children. It's costing Turkey $3 billion a year to achieve. The aim is to ensure that no 11 to 13-year-olds miss out and bring education levels closer to European standards.
Turkey
is working hard to be part of the civilized world in every area. Turkey does not want to be perceived as a third world country, and the most important prerequisite to being part of the civilized world is education.
Tackling poverty is also at the heart of Turkey's reforms. So far this year, for the first time in its history, the Republic's spending more on education than defence. Before 1997, 1 in 3 rural children aged 11 to 13 were not in school. Most were girls. Turkey's Big Bang approach to education reform meant that almost overnight, rural families were forced to send their children to nearby towns to complete the 3 more years of study. And as a result, school enrollment for rural girls has soared.
That it's mandatory, I think, is terribly important because certainly in rural areas, short of, criminalizing not sending your children to school, people very often won't send their children to school. So in that sense, I think it was a necessary and long overdue step, and certainly for girls, because very often girls are the ones who are not sent to school.
Yaprak and 400 other girls are enrolled at the only boarding school in Erciş, one of 14 created especially for rural children in this eastern region of Van. But negotiating the cultural, economic and geographic obstacles on the road to girls' education in this region has not been easy. The reforms involved closing many small rural schools, building larger urban day and boarding schools, and prohibiting children under 15 from working. Major changes in the lives of poor rural families. Almost 150,000 children are now enrolled in boarding schools. A third are girls. After a week of lessons, these girls are on their way home to their village Arçeren. It's typical of the region's feudal Kurdish mountain communities. Yaprak's father is one of 3 landlords and in a position to promote girls' education.
I am very happy. I am doing my best. I am helping her schooling. I am encouraging the other girls in the village who aren't attending to go to school. I am telling other people that my daughter's attending and they too should send their daughters.
Yaprak's one of 8 children. Kiamet, her oldest sister, now 22, says compulsory education came too late for her.
I wasn't able to go. If I had a chance now, I would continue from where I had left off. But I don't think I have that chance, because they say it is your time to get married.
In this patriarchal society, Yaprak's mother and other women like her missed out on their education. All of them want a better life for their daughters, more opportunities, more independence.
In our time, they were reading the Quran and women were covered. There were no schools. Now there are schools. The situation is different. I like the idea of her becoming a doctor. God willing, she will become a doctor.
We want girls to study very much. Our life is not good. Maybe they can have a good life. Life in the village is not good. Here it is tending cattle, sheep, making bread. We want the girls to study and save themselves.
Ama tabii zor oluyor. Kolay değil. Bir de mesela bizim
It's not easy. There's no female equality. That's impossible here. In the west of the country, there's male-female equality, but here, the leaders are men.
Çünkü burada genelde dediğim gibi öncü erkek. Biz çalışmak istesek...
There was no compulsory education in my time, but now we have got it. And 5 of my siblings are studying.
Zorunlu eğitim yoktu. Şimdi var. Benim 5
God willing, we will be able to support their study until the end.
okumalarını sağlarız.
It's an extremely conservative area in religious terms. Religion has a profound influence over daily life still. Sheikhs, imams, they all have a lot of influence. It's a very male-dominated part of the country. It's a part of the country where still today, unfortunately, girls get murdered for, such heinous crimes as going to the cinema with a man who's neither her husband or, say, her relative. So very difficult to overcome those cultural and religious barriers.
Before 1997, girls like Yaprak would attend local schools for just 5 years. After that, helping their families in the village became the priority. Now, an estimated 650,000 children travel to nearby towns to complete the 3 more years of learning. But allowing girls of this age to travel away from their family homes does cause concern.
This 8-year education has got very difficult dimensions for us. One of them is lack of infrastructure. In this area called Zeylan, there are 7 or 8 villages. There is no school past primary stages. Here they all have to go to Erciyes. It would be better if they brought together 3 or 4 villages and build a school to take them for 8 years. The children study here for 5 years and then they tell us to send the children away. But our village is not on a main road and we are not a central village. There is no transportation and our roads are not sealed. There is no infrastructure, otherwise 8 years is perfect.
Most of the new school enrolments are at co-educational day schools, and a nationwide network of buses now ferries rural children to and from their communities, with local contractors operating in each region at the government's expense. These children have just finished their school day in Erciyes. Their round trip to and from their village takes them over 2 hours a day every day.
We are happy about the minibus, but in winter where there is a lot of snow, when it's cold and roads are blocked, we can't study very well. And therefore we miss classes and get behind.
We all want to study, but some of our families might not send us if it wasn't compulsory.
Everyone who studies via the transport system would like to study at boarding school, or they would like a secondary school in their villages. We'd like it this way. We don't want to come and go by minibus.
The government recognizes the need to improve the existing infrastructure.
We are especially having problems with transporting children to schools. We are still transporting children from 28,000 settlements to 5,000 schools. We are using 32,000 vehicles. Undoubtedly, pupils want to attend schools in their own area, but it's not possible to solve this problem immediately.
But transport is not the only contentious issue involved in Turkey's education strategy.
Dolayısıyla o çekimler yapılacak. Bu konuda bilginiz olsun.
Despite increasing girls' school attendance since 1997, it's been hard to find enough teachers in Turkey's eastern provinces, like Van. Here, it's not just access difficulties that have starved this region of education. During the 14 years of conflict between the Turkish army and the Kurdish Workers' Party, it was often the teachers who became victims. Although peace was restored in 1998, the scars remain. Experienced teachers are reluctant to come to these remote areas, let alone stay. The teacher in Yaprak's village graduated 2 years ago.
Sometimes my teacher friends have to take care of 120 children because most teachers don't want to come here. Mountain villages are isolated and can't find teachers. We have a shortage of teachers here. There should be 2.
The newly appointed teachers are interns with no experience who have just finished studies. They complete 2 to 3 years compulsory service in the region and then they return to their own cities and regions, to the west. The number of experienced teachers who can give good education to these children is very little. Only a few of the teachers from these regions stay here. I can express it like this. The region is like a testing ground. Teachers are sent here to gain experience with the children of this region.
Overcrowding is yet another major problem for the government. New and existing schools are struggling to cope with the increasing number of students.
Aslında 2000 yılına gelindiğinde zorunlu eğitimin
It was first thought that by the year 2000, compulsory education would be delivered in classes of 30 students across Turkey.
Daha sonra görüldü ki
Later, we found that the implementation of compulsory education across the country was not as easy as first thought.
Sonuçlar şunu gösteriyor. Yaklaşık olarak
At the moment, we have got about 35,000 schools providing 8 years of compulsory education.
Bunlardan 1/3 aşağı yukarı istenilen
Only 1/3 have got the desired standards.
Birleştirilmiş sınıflar şeklinde.
The others are in classes of 50 to 60 students.
Karşımıza çıkabiliyor. Şu anda hala bu konuyla ilgili sıkıntımız var.
Despite the policy of 3 more years compulsory education, girls still drop out of school, especially once they reach puberty. Elif, Yaprak, Serap and Aisha are all continuing their studies under the new system, but others, like their cousins, weren't given the opportunity. Poverty, together with long-held religious and cultural beliefs about the role of adolescent girls in society, play an important part in the decision.
Why aren't you studying?
Because our economic situation wasn't good.
If you had more economic resources, would you study?
I would. I want to study now. I wanted to study, but I couldn't.
Then there's a scarf problem.
Yes, there is a scarf problem. My family wants me to wear a scarf. Because of this, we are not studying. If they let us wear scarves, we could study again.
If you were allowed to wear the scarf, would you study?
We could have studied if we were allowed to.
Under Turkish law, they are not permitted to cover their heads in schools. And so people just don't send their children to school. It's a very, very controversial issue, this headscarf issue in Turkey. In fact, education is one of the most highly politicized areas in this country, one where the pro-secular establishment is battling overtly pious Turks. It's one of the, I would say, last battlegrounds for that. And there's still a huge degree of resistance on the part of the secular establishment to allow any sort of flexibility.
In reality, here, the boys and the girls are not equal. They send the boys to school, but not the girls. Boys and girls need to be equal. It's the same in most of our villages and in the eastern part. In the west, it's not the same. Most of my uncles' children are not studying and they don't care about studying. Some do have economic resources, but they too won't send their girl. They think bad things will happen to the girls if they go away to school. Their thinking is wrong, and I'm thinking about standing up against this.
1 out of 10 children are still not studying. Almost 3/4 are girls. Education reformers in Turkey hope that providing urban schooling would have the added bonus of helping integrate children from predominantly Kurdish communities into mainstream Turkish society. But preserving their cultural identity is a key factor in how the Kurds view the value of national education.
Integrating the Kurds into the broader Turkish community is a very sort of political issue in a sense, because, for many Kurds it's a forced assimilation of their culture. So there's also been a good deal of resistance to the national education system for that reason. Also, you have to bear in mind that many of these children, by the time they reach school, they still haven't perhaps spoken a single word of Turkish.
These regional boarding schools exist in only a few countries in the world. The trade union's view is that these schools are in reality centers of assimilation. We feel that these are places where the policy of Turkifying the Kurd takes place. We think that it's not right to integrate Kurds with Turkish society through boarding schools. The view of our trade union is that the Kurds must have education in their mother tongue, and integration should take place in this context.
There's another complication in Turkey's grand plan for improving education. What happens at the end of 8 years compulsory education? Here in Van province, more than half the rural population is unemployed, according to Turkey's Chamber of Commerce. The years of conflict have starved the region of investment. For up to 6 months of the year, most men from Yaprak's village travel to the richer west of the country to find work. The men debate whether all this education for girls will go to waste.
It's not worth it if the girls are educated and come back to the village. The purpose in our area is that people take education in relation to financial gain, to study and get a job in the end, and then they will bring money to parents and the village. That's the main purpose.
Education by itself is a very highly valued thing in Turkey. It's almost like a foreign currency. Everybody wants to get an educational certificate, and the more you get, the happier you are. But the thing is, as long as you don't provide returns to the education you give to children, then there are the rising hopes and expectations unfulfilled, and chaos follows, I think.
Liseyi okumak, liseyi de bitirdikten sonra zaten üniversite.
I want to finish high school, to go to university to get a profession to become a doctor.
Doktor olmak istiyorum.
If it is going to be worth it, I won't mind leaving my family and the village.
Hiçbir şey fark etmez benim için.
But Turan Yilmaz, one of the village's few university graduates, argues there are still benefits from increasing the schooling period, even if the girls return to the village.
When we talk to the girls who have returned to the village after completing their education, they are socialized and educated and tell us things that are very useful. They know about family planning, about social interaction. It has a major effect.
Hayır, gereklidir bence.
I think it is still necessary because there's a difference between those who study and those who don't.
Şimdi örneğin okuyanın hali başkadır, okumayan eğitim.
Such as knowing how to socialize when they go somewhere, the way they behave is different.
Konuşması, gidip gelmesi.
Yaprak's sister Kiamet understands this difference from first-hand experience.
Tabii ya, bir de mesela kendini...
You see yourself as ignorant, and because you don't have a social circle, you don't have friends, you start to see the man as superior. The man's superiority over the women becomes apparent. It is something you don't like. It is unappealing. It makes the life for women more constrained.
Recent research into the causes of absenteeism showed that rural families want more practical courses for children, like home economics and agricultural studies, linking education to the realities of rural life.
Eğer kız çocukları eğitilir ve daha fazla okursa, daha çok okula giderlerse,
if the girls are educated more, of course finding work is important.
Elbette önemli, ama okumaları iş bulmalarından çok daha.
But we feel their education is more important, more primary.
Okuması sonucunda bir iş talebi.
The demand from males to be employed in Turkey has traditionally been higher than females.
İş talebi çok daha yüksek çıkıyor karşımıza. Kız çocukların okumasını biz sadece ekonomik...
We prioritize girls' education not just in terms of its contribution to the economy,
eğitimi ve toplumun ruh sağlığının
but in bringing up children, society's mental state being more agreeable,
toplum hayatına girmesi bakımından çok önemsiyoruz kızların okumasını.
And increasing women's participation in society.
İş bulma oranı doğal bir sonuç olarak karşımıza çıkacak.
Ve soru cümlesi. Buradaki kişilerin...
Extending the length of compulsory education from 8 to 12 years is firmly on the government's agenda.
Gökyüzündeki bulut çok kara. Gökyüzündeki...
But commentators are concerned about this extension without first consulting key players, something that's been lacking to date.
I would have liked more evaluation going on at this level. I would have liked quotas, probably, for female school managers. I would have liked the sensitivity and the gender mainstreaming introduced to teacher education. The textbooks, the syllabus, the curricula, and the teaching methods are in need of improvement. And more often than not, girls and women are not represented in the materials and the curricula on an equal basis with men and boys.
In the last 6 years, absenteeism among children aged 11 to 13 has dropped from 1 in 3 to 1 in 10 across Turkey, and it's girls' enrollments that have improved the most. But with 750,000 girls only attending school on an irregular basis, there are still lessons being learned.
What the government really needs to do is to operate at a very grassroots level rather than, imposing these grand national strategies from Ankara. I think it needs to get the local governments much more involved, NGOs much more involved. NGOs that would be able to prove, certainly to the girls and their families, that as a result of their education they can improve their lives.